Welcome to another edition of The Spirit of Douglas, tracing the epic journey from the US, Europe to Wanaka, New Zealand. So, this episode is Darwin to Alice, or I should say Darwin to Alice Springs. The script is adapted from a trip report from Craig Mason. Morning in Darwin arrived wet, not the passing kind of tropical shower, but steady rain that had settled in overnight and showed little intention of leaving. Spirit sat quietly in the downpour. By the time the crew stepped out to begin the morning pre-flight inspection, both aircraft and crew were already well acquainted with the weather. It was going to be one of those mornings. Back at the hotel, the Northern Territory was reminding everyone just how powerful the wet season can be. Many of the guests staying there weren't travelling at all. They were residents of Katherine, stranded far from home. The Katherine River had risen 63 feet above its normal dry season level, swallowing bridges and cutting the town off from the outside world. Roads were closed, and in floodwater country, that can mean something else too. Occasionally, crocodiles decide to explore new neighbourhoods. It was a turbulent time across the top end, but aviation has a way of continuing through conditions that stop everything else. Soon enough, Spirit's engines came to life. The takeoff from Darwin was smooth. The climb carried the aircraft quickly up into the grey stratus layer above the coast, where the world outside the cockpit became a uniform curtain of cloud. Inside that cloud was a great deal of moisture, but the morning had two advantages. First, there was very little convective build-up, which meant the air remained relatively calm. And second, in this warm tropical region, the aircraft could cruise comfortably below the freezing level while still remaining safely above the unseen terrain. That mattered. At higher altitude, icing would almost certainly have been a concern. Ice is something every pilot prefers to avoid. It adds weight to the aircraft and disturbs the smooth airflow over the wings that create the lift. More weight, less lift. Not generally considered a desirable aviation combination. For much of the journey south, Spirit remained wrapped inside that endless grey cloud. Then gradually the light began to change. The stratus thinned, small patches of cumulus appeared, and suddenly the sky ahead opened wide. Brilliant sunlight, deep blue stretching across the horizon. After hours of grey, eyes needed a moment to adjust to the brightness. Below, the landscape unfolded into an extraordinary pattern of hills, winding river systems, and scattered vegetation. This was Central Australia, vast, ancient and sparsely populated. After several hours crossing the country that seemed almost endless, the distinctive ranges surrounding Alice Springs finally rose into view. With the afternoon heat building, Spirit took a little longer to slow for landing. But Alice Springs offers something every pilot appreciates: runway. Lots of runway. There was plenty of room to roll. And after Darwin's soaking rain, Spirit seemed to enjoy the chance to dry out. But the desert brings its own challenges. Flies. Lots and lots of flies. Within minutes, the crew had adopted a very familiar outback gesture, a rhythmic hand wave, every 2 or 3 seconds, a small dance that every local knows. Later that afternoon, the aircraft prepared for something a little different. A photo sortie, this time with a squirrel helicopter. Its pilot, known as Griffo, brought more than 30 years of helicopter flying experience, including countless hours mustering cattle across the Australian outback. And he handled the little helicopter with remarkable precision. For the first sequence, the helicopter circled Spirit while the aircraft lined up for departure. Then the brakes were released and the race began. With its head start, the helicopter swept past along the runway at close range, but Spirit was accelerating quickly. Before long, the aircraft surged ahead, overtaking the helicopter as its speed climbed beyond what the helicopter could maintain. A perfect setup for some extraordinary footage. Once airborne in the filming area, keeping both aircraft together required careful choreography. Spirit flew wide sweeping turns on the outside of the circle. The helicopter remained inside. It's like a running track. The runner in the outside lane has to move faster to stay alongside the one on the inside. Behind them, the landscape surrounding Alice Springs was transforming in the evening light. The hills glowed with shades of yellow, orange, and deep desert red. It was a magnificent backdrop. The photo sortie finished with a helicopter sliding neatly along Spirit for the landing and taxi back to the apron. Griffo placed his machine with effortless accuracy. For those riding alongside the film crew, it had certainly been exciting, but it also felt calm, controlled, and entirely professional. Later, he would say that filming flights like this were among the most enjoyable flying he'd ever done. The debrief took place on the airfield beside Spirit, just as the desert delivered one more spectacle, an extraordinary outback sunset unfolding behind the aircraft. The day had begun in tropical rain and ended in blazing desert light, a day of contrasts. And another chapter in Spirit's journey across Australia came to a close. Now let's just circle back for that shot of Spirit with all those aircraft in the background. Did you notice them? Air New Zealand 787s without engines, Scoot, Jetstar and Air New Zealand A320 stranded, all waiting for new engines or engine repairs. There is a major engine issue with the Rolls-Royce powered 787s and the GTF powered A320s and A321s over durability of engine parts, and the engine makers are scrambling to catch up. So airlines are parking up their aircraft in various aircraft parks around the world, like the Alice. Also for the eagle eye, green grass in the centre of Australia in summer, you ask? Well, Australia has been hit with unusually strong rains through what is called the red centre, which is now green. Now, finally, no aviation story that involves a DC-3 and Alice Springs, which we call, by the way, the Alice, can pass without one of my favourite movie scenes from the film A Town Like Alice, starring Peter Finch and Virginia McKenna. Here is the final scene, and you can watch the whole movie on YouTube in the link below. It's a beautiful scene, and it's a great movie, a really great movie, based on the book by Neville Shute, who, by the way, was an aviation engineer working for various companies in the United Kingdom, and he wrote books as well. So there's a bit of trivia for you. But please join me again as we follow Spirit's journey next to Sydney, and then an aerial shoot around Sydney, and then on to New Zealand. I'm Jeffrey Thomas. Take care.
Mr. Harmon, I've got some news for you. You've come across the world to England to look for her, haven't you?
That's right.
Well, she's gone across the world to Australia to look for you.
Hey.
Announcing the arrival of Trans-Australian Airways Flight 571 from Darwin.
A4. I'm going on with Eddie Conley to Willstown. Any messages for me?
No, sorry, Joe.
You sure?
No, nothing.
Joe.